Hi, Eric Bailey alongside Eli Lederman for this week's Tulsa World podcast, talking everything Oklahoma football. We are just a little over 1 week away from opening day, and the thrill will be back for Oklahoma, for Sooner Nation, and especially for Brent Venables. Eli, we had a chance yesterday to sit and talk to the Coach Venables, and some of his players, and you could feel the excitement with everything they talked about.
I mean, it's been a long off season, Eric. I mean, let's go back all the way to late November of last year when Lincoln Riley leaves and that kicks off the entire off season. It's finally time again for football, which I think is exciting. We've talked so much about Brent Venables and this new era and everything that's come with it. And now it's finally time. And I think we're all ready for it. Us, the fans, everybody, just to be back and shoot 8 days from now. It's Friday. Eight days from now or 7 days from now, we'll be staring at on the eve of week one. And that's pretty dang exciting.
Yesterday on Thursday, it was the first opportunity for us to talk to players since before fall camps started. And that's very unusual. Usually we get players once a week, get a handful of players. But yesterday was the only day really before game week that we had a chance to talk to players. We talked to them right before fall camp began. There was a situation this year. It was different, though, with Cale Gundy abruptly resigning. And there was a cloud kind of overhanging the program. And I think that was partially the reason why we really didn't get to talk to players. Yesterday was the first day we had a chance to talk to players. I did talk to Keith Lawrence and Eric Gray a little bit about the situation, and we didn't go into detail, but I just wanted to get a feel for what the players went through during that time. And both of them said that Coach Venables did a really good job of keeping them focused on task and just work on football. And they said it was so therapeutic just being on the practice field with everything going on surrounding them inside the locker room, outside the locker room. They just focused on football, and they said they focused on September 3rd, which is the opener against UTEP. So, maybe just probably the final thing we'll really talk about Cale Gundy for a while. But I thought it was important to reach out to those players and just get a feel for what they went through with everything, with all the distractions swirling around.
Yeah, I mean, I think from everything we gleaned from these last 4 weeks, all the training camp was that within the program for all the overflow of the Cale Gundy story and how that kind of was dissected and whatnot in the public discourse within the program, September 3rd always seemed to kind of be on the mind. And I think you could argue that in some ways the story got drawn out by keeping players kind of sidelined from speaking for close to, I think it was like 23, 24 days in the end. But on the whole, it seems like internally and where it really matters, this team has kind of been focused, and that, at least for them, has been in the rear view. And I think on the whole, that's how it should be.
I thought it was really interesting too when we got a chance to talk to Coach Venables. We asked him about a depth chart. I had a chance to ask him about when he was going to release a depth chart, and also, what was his quarterback situation? Everyone knows that Dillon Gabriel is going to be the starter. Who's going to be the backup quarterback? And he said it's still a three-man race. Nick Evers, General Booty, Davis Benison. They're still working through that. I think Monday we'll have an idea who the backup quarterback will be. And we all know the backup quarterback's just as important as the starter because you're just one play away. So I thought that was interesting that he talked about that, and also that we're going to get a depth chart on Monday. That really makes us feel like it's football season again.
Depth chart season, man. Can't wait. See that too deep. But yeah, the quarterbacks are interesting. I think from what we've seen in camp, and we've kind of seen the same 40-minute stretch of practice every time we're out there, but it's looked like Davis Bevel, the Pitt transfer, who's probably the most experienced of the backup options, has been the guy taking those second team snaps. But from the sound of it with Brent Venables, things are not just settled yet. But my question for you, Eric, I'm going to put you on the spot. How soon is it, whether it's Davis Bevel, General Booty, or Nick Evers, how soon in that opener, assuming it goes against UTEP the way a lot of people would expect, how soon do you think we see one of those backup quarterbacks?
I probably think maybe fourth quarter. We'll have to wait and see. You just never know. It's hard to predict. I mean, even week 2 in Kent State, we might see a couple of those quarterbacks then too. Bevel's got experience. General Booty, we saw him, what he did at JUCO. We know he can play football. And Nick Evers is, he's just a true freshman too. So it'd be good if you could get all three of those some work at some point during the non-conference season. The best guess would be these first 2 weeks, of course, with Nebraska in week 3. But I think it's so important for just this program moving forward that you do have that quality backup, because again, you saw what happened to Dillon Gabriel, knock on wood. I hope it doesn't happen again if you're an OU fan, that he was hurt in week 3 last year at UCF. So you just never know when that backup quarterback's going to be needed.
Yeah, and I guess, again, we're assuming here that UTEP and Kent State, those games go certain ways, but I wonder, and these are maybe our week 1 questions for Brent Venables and the staff, but Is it that Jeff Levy and this offense, they want to get, X number of series with the first team guys, or do they feel like they've got to be up a certain number? I'll be curious to see kind of what they want to see from the first team, first of all, and then after that, how do they work in some of those second teamers? Because you're right, they need to get these guys some experience and know what they've got there.
It's crazy, Eli, when you think about it. UTEP, they're going to open the season tomorrow, Saturday.
It's wild.
Conference USA game against North Texas. And Seth Luttrell, the head coach at North Texas, good friends with Bill Beadenbow. Bill made sure we knew about that when we had a chance to talk to him before the season. And it'll be neat because, I talked to Keith Lawrence. Keith Lawrence said that this is going to be like a Super Bowl game for him to watch because he wants to see what the opponent's going to be like, what they expect. And from an OU perspective, they're going to have game film going into the opening week. They're going to have game film on UTEP. I kind of know what they like to do, who the key players are. No guessing games because they'll know what UTEP is. But then again, it seemed like Brent Venables didn't want to put too much stock in that either, too. He wants the focus to be on Oklahoma and what they can do.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a funny thing. And, you mentioned the familiarity with Bill Beadenbow and the coach at North Texas. You've got Dana Dimmel at UTEP, the head coach. He and Brent Venables were at K-State together in the 90s. And I spoke to Dana last month. And what I learned about UTEP there is they're returning a lot of the team that was probably their best team in the last decade from last season. So maybe that's part of it with Brent Venables, because you're right. He said, we're not really there's not much of an advantage from getting able to watch them. I don't know if I buy that, but that's how he spoke. He said, we're focused on us, but maybe the other thing in there is that the team that's going to play tomorrow against North Texas isn't all that different from last year's, because this UTEP team really is, they're returning almost the entire front seven, a lot of the offense. So it will look, I think, a lot like last year's team, but certainly I think any team in the country would take the freshest game film they can get going into week one. That's a unique opportunity there.
Brent Venables pulled out a baseball reference saying every opponent that comes in, it's like a game 7 to the opponents when they play Oklahoma. And even strongly said those opponents hate Oklahoma. Forget respect. They hate Oklahoma. They want to beat Oklahoma. So I think it might be a little bit of a, just make sure his team's ready for any opponent that walks into that stadium. That was interesting too.
He said game 7, and I was thinking, he said game 7, and my mind goes to, all right, that's like 4 games into the conference schedule. And then I realized we're talking baseball. Threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, hockey, NBA finals. Game 7 can mean a lot of things when you think about it too. So I thought it was interesting too. And you brought this up, the Cheetah position. It's kind of a hybrid position in Venables' defense. And you wonder, who's going to be slotted in that? It sounds like the nickel spots turned into the Cheetah spot where you got a guy who can play all kinds of things. And 2 names came up yesterday, Justin Harrington and Deshaun White. And he was interested in talking about both of them. It talked about the versatility that both of them had, how they can cover, how they can blitz, run stop, cover zone. You've got to be a versatile player to play that position. And he said that's why they're hard to recruit, because they're hard to find. And it sounds like Harrington and White are going to get strong looks to start the season at that spot.
Yeah, if you look at the secondary, almost everything but that spot is settled. I think we can count on seeing Woody Washington and DJ Graham at the 2 corner spots. You can be pretty confident that Billy Bowman and Keith Lawrence will be those kind of standard safeties. But that nickel Cheetah position spot is open. And I think what jumped out to me most, because you said it's hard to kind of find the right guy for it. Brent Venables said he's looking for football players, because that spot kind of requires you to be a Swiss Army knife and do everything. So it's got to be the right fit. And it's what makes it interesting that we're talking about for that spot. Traditional safeties. We're talking about Deshaun White, who's spent most of his career at linebacker, and I guess the different qualities they would bring to it. But then with Deshaun White, you also wonder if you take him away from linebacker, where does that leave them at a spot that Brent Venables even yesterday acknowledged that the depth is a little bit shaky at. It's no more so now than with TD Roof done for the year.
Yeah, and on a side note, they were asked about the scholarship situation with the retirement of Brendan Walker and TJ Roof being out for the season, and there's nothing they can do with those scholarships right now. But they're focused on making sure those guys who are going to ask what's next, they're going to still be part of the program. Brendan Walker, of course, retired, health issues, medical issues with his back, and he's going to be a student coach. And TJ Roof, we've seen him. I think he'll be an asset to this team in some way, just his leadership alone. So
I still wonder if he'll be back next year. He's got that chance to maybe get that medical red shirt year 7. Here's a name that didn't come up and hasn't come up a whole lot in camp. I was kind of going back and going through some of our transcripts, Trey Morrison, who's another guy you might have looked at maybe that nickel spot, played a ton at North Carolina. He's a veteran, and he spoke in the spring about having played a nickel spot in the past, and he's versatile. But his name hasn't come up a whole lot. Now, I'd imagine in those early games, we'll see some rotation on defense, but he'd be a guy I would at least kind of throw into that mix, at least based on profile and what he brings. But we'll see really probably what they think about him as a coaching staff in those first few games and how they feature him.
It's going to be interesting too, because there's a lot of newcomers. You just wonder about, I think of CJ Colden from Wyoming. What's he going to be like? What's he going to bring to the table? And had a chance to talk to Jeffrey Johnson too, the Tulane transfer who has 40 plus starts, a lot of experience. And it was just kind of funny. Last year at this time, he was getting ready to walk into the stadium to beat Oklahoma. Now he's going to walk into this year. He's going to walk into the stadium to help Oklahoma win games. And he just kind of got a kick out of that, thinking, it's going to be really cool to be on this side of the coin instead of the other one too. So a lot of players I think we'll learn about early. And you talk about those quarterbacks getting early action. I'm kind of anxious to see some of these newcomers and who's going to play and who's going to come out and start right away and who's going to be impact players from the get-go.
Well, note there, OU fan, not only did he come with Tulane to beat OU, they almost beat OU. But I think all the talk about the defense, perhaps the most underrated place to look is that spot in the middle of the defensive line. I think with Jalen Redmond and what Jeffrey Johnson brings, everyone's focused about the secondary. We're talking about the linebackers. I think that has the potential to be maybe one of the most exciting developments on this OU defense. If those two guys can hold that down and bring that pressure up the middle, I think that could be one of the strengths of this defense. So I'm really excited to see him. And then as you said, there's a lot of guys we want to see, these new players, even down at linebacker to Kip Lewis and Jaron Kanik and all these freshman linebackers who I think have earned some of the playing time they might get, but also out of necessity. I think we're going to see them early and just see what they've got, because they've been spoken of so highly since they arrived in the spring. And we'll hopefully, as they can get maybe into the depth, maybe they're up big in these first 2 weeks, get to see these guys and see what they look like and see if they're guys that can lean on when we get to October and November.
And, one of the guys that we know a little bit about, but I'm more interested in seeing just playing under the system is Ethan Downs. I want to see what kind of playmaker he's going to be in this system. And you're right, Redmond and Johnson in the middle on the defensive line, their aggression and how they're used. And it's going to be fun to watch seeing how this team develop. Now, fun, I don't know if fun will be the right word sometimes, because there are going to be some growing pains. I think that's the one thing everyone needs to realize. It's not going to be seamless. It's not going to go out there and Oklahoma's defense is going to shut people out. There's going to be some growing pains. And I think Venables understands that. I think the coaches understand that with the transition, but we'll see these first two games, especially starting on September 3rd against UTEP, what it's going to be like.
And I'd also say, growing pains on defense, probably the same for the offense. I think we know what to expect from a Jeff Lebby offense, and you would expect them to be scoring a lot. But those first few series on September 3rd or even on September 10th with Kent State might not look the way it's going to look a month down the road. I mean, they're going to be figuring things out. And at least the good thing, college football fans don't usually overreact to stuff. So if they start slow, I'm sure no one will be freaking out, and we'll see if Twitter's already firing Jeff Lebby 3 series in. But I think growing pains is a good way to look at this. It's not going to be perfect from the start, that's for sure.
I remember Lincoln Riley's first year as offensive coordinator in 2015. That first game, they kind of stalled a little bit, and I was getting tweets. He's the wrong guy. Oklahoma hired the wrong guy, and it's funny. Yeah. So we'll see what the reaction's like when they go 3 and out, or something happens, throw a pick. We'll see what happens. But it wouldn't, college football wouldn't be college football without fans. That's for sure. Offensively, you mentioned that too. I think the one player I'm interested in seeing on offense is Marcus Major. And I'm anxious to talk to him. We still haven't talked to him in a long time. I would love
not since the spring, right?
Yeah, no, we didn't even talk to him in the spring. We wanted to.
Wow, yeah.
I think it's just one of those things. I'd love an opportunity to talk to him and just talk about how he's going to be using this offense. And I guess we're going to see it before we talk to him, it seems like. And with Lebby's passion for running the football, I think Major can really, really produce in this offense just with his running style, just kind of a more powerful back that can find holes. We saw some glimpses of him at times last season. I think that he's a player that I'm really going to keep an eye on.
I think I've said it on here a bunch. I know I've written it a bunch, but it's really important, I think, to frame the running back conversation this year around how Jeff Lebby uses his running backs. This is not there's no Kennedy Brooks on the roster, and I'm sure Jeff Lebby would love to have him if he could be here still, but this is not an offense that needs an 1,000-yard rusher. that, this Jeff Lebby's offenses at UCF and Ole Miss, they used the depth at running back, and they used a lot of guys. And I don't think he had a 1,000-yard rusher in those seasons. So he's going to need the depth beyond Eric Gray. And I think that starts with Marcus Major, who, for a variety of reasons, hasn't seen a lot of the field. I think it's 60 carries in 3 years. He's going to need to lean, I think, on at least one of the freshman backs, Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes. So starting with Marcus Major in this depth, I'm as curious as you are. And I think, again, these early non-conference games should give us an opportunity to see those guys and give them an opportunity to prove it. We saw a bit of Javante Barnes in the spring game. He looked good. Heard nothing but good things about Gavin Sawchuk. I talked to Eric Gray about him at practice yesterday, and he said what impressed him, we've all heard about Gavin Sawchuk's speed on the field, but he said the speed with which he's picked things up and learned this offense coming in the summer is really going to help him when he gets out there. So I think, among all the exciting, interesting things to watch on the offense, for me, it starts with the running backs.
As we wind down this week's session, just an update on what the schedule is going to be like next week. We'll have an opportunity to talk to coordinators, Jeff Lebby and Ted Roof, Monday morning. We'll get players after practice Monday night around 7 o'clock. It'll be a late night. And then turn around and we'll get Brent Venables on Tuesday morning. And then we'll get more players Tuesday night. That's going to be kind of the game week routine in terms of media. So all the reporting and all the interviewing will take place on Mondays and Tuesdays. I think Brent Venables' radio show, we have to confirm this. I think it'll be Monday night. In years past, it's been on Tuesday night. So I need to double check that as well. But right now it appears like it'll be Monday nights too. So time to be determined, and we'll know a little bit more later. One last thing, Eli, was the fun yesterday. Before practice, we had a good time. Kind of explain what we did yesterday.
Well, we were invited because, of course, the media, the most important folks out there, were invited along with some other people to check out the food that's going to be on offer at Oklahoma Memorial Stadium this fall. The stuff they'll be selling in the concession stands, what they might be serving in some of those club level seating and all that. And we just kind of got to go around a little kind of small plate offerings, just about everything. And I had my first Fletcher's corny dog. I was corrected. The corny dog from the Texas State Fair that they've got, A+. Had a hot chicken sandwich, but some ice cream. I mean, the works. But Eric, the real winner, both of us agreed, were the Korean barbecue bowls from Cup Pop.
Outstanding. And when I got there after you had one, and you guys said that's the best thing there. And I'm not big, we've been on the road enough. I'm not really anxious to try different things, but I tell you, I tried that, and I woke up today thinking about that. Great food, man. It was
the real deal.
Rice and noodles with the beef and the sauce, and you mix it up in a bowl, and it was perfect. It was perfection. And I actually, when we were walking out, I went up to the proprietor and told him, it was great, best thing there. So that was my A+. But there were a lot of great offerings, though. You're right. We saw little corn dogs with the hot Cheetos on it.
Yeah, I skipped those.
Yeah, some old standbys like Midway Deli. They with their sides and their sandwiches, and then also the one vendor that wasn't getting a lot of action, I think, was Pizza Hut, but they'll be in the stadium again. But everyone knows Pizza Hut, so you're going to get good food there. So no, I thought it was really neat to be invited to that and get an idea of what the game day concessions will be like. It's one of my favorite days of the year. They haven't done it much since COVID. This is the first time they brought it back. So OU fans will be they'll be excited about what the offerings are during game day.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I will be hitting back Cup Pop for that Korean barbecue sometime soon.
All right. Well, Eli and I will be back next week with a podcast earlier in the week as we get ready for game week. It's finally here. We've waited a long time. We appreciate all the listeners to this podcast. Be sure and subscribe on any platform that you use, and keep reading our work on TulsaWorld.com.